Truly I say to you, unless you turn and become like a child, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. What does this mean? What about children is necessary to be Christ-like? Children are seemingly immature, inexperienced, and unknowledgeable. But they're also trusting, unpretentious, and totally dependent, especially on their parents. That parent-child relationship is a metaphor that comes up in the Bible a lot. They're the best illustration for the proper relationship we need to have with God. Of course, like most metaphors, they're imperfect, like any human attempt at communicating complex ideas. But we can identify some key insights. Jesus wants us to learn how to be humble like a child. This means unlearning some of what we consider to be the virtues of being an adult or being mature. We think that it's sophisticated to become more skeptical and critical, more in tune with the nuances of blending in with adult society and being adept at climbing the social hierarchies in the world and becoming increasingly independent and self-sufficient. But these are virtues of a broken world. We wouldn't have to be so skeptical if there weren't people out there trying to deceive us or try to create a facade to conform with society if we were perfectly powerful, or be self-sufficient if our basic needs were always cared for. In trying to adapt to a broken world, we grow in ourselves a prime vice, pride. Now, let's dive into this idea of pride and humility. Starting with pride. Augustine considered pride the foundational sin. He wrote, "It was pride that changed the angels into devils. It's humility that makes men as angels." What is pride? In short, it's a need for superiority. This idea to be better than others, which is the antithesis of serving others. C.S. Lewis wrote, "Pride gets no pleasure out of having something, only out of having more of it than the next man." We say that people are proud of being rich or clever or good looking, but they're not. They're proud of being richer or cleverer or better looking than others. Pride chases dominance and control. It leads to so many other sins, which is why these writers have argued that it's the foundational sin, the prime sin. The pursuit of superiority of others lends not only to the careless selfishness, but an active contempt towards others. It warps into anger, sorrow, greed, and all the other categories of sins. And most dangerously, it pushes us into an internal state of establishing a kingdom where we worship ourselves and our own aspirations. This isolates us from God. C.S. Lewis, quoting him again, he expands on this idea. Pride leads to every other vice. It's the complete anti-God state of mind. The reason pride is the foundational sin and leads to every other sin is because it's the first step in completely turning away from God. Like a child severing ties to their guidance from the parents, we can't be corrected if we only look to ourselves and set ourselves as the objects of worship. Again, C.S. Lewis warns, as long as you're proud, you cannot know God. A proud man is always looking down on things and people. And of course, as long as you're looking down, you can't see something that is above you. Pride blinds us. It blinds us from the presence of God because we believe we can take the place of God and determine what will happen next on our own strength and wisdom. We're the adults in the situation. We're in charge of things, and we need to use our own skills to push forward and shape our future. It sounds obviously stupid and foolish, but we fall into this trap so subtly and without knowing. Not only is pride the foundational sin, it's the sin that's the most subtle. Again, C.S. Lewis writes, "The devil laughs. He's perfectly content to see you becoming chaste or brave or self-controlled, provided all the time he is setting up in you the dictatorship of pride. Just as he would be quite content to see your chilblains cured if he allowed in return to give you cancer." Our language is limited in capturing and understanding this foundational sin. We can be proud of our loved ones or proud of doing good work, and it's hard to call these things a sin as long as our minds are outside of ourselves and we're proud without giving glory to ourselves and instead praising others. We're far away from this insidious evil of pride that might be present if we were proud of our loved ones because of how it reflects on us, or proud of the good work that was done by us. Even a crude, proud attitude to desire to be celebrated, to be the center of attention because you want to be at the approval of others from a place of insecurity is still better than the pride of thinking that the approval of others is not necessary because you're so much superior. Of course, as C.S. Lewis advised, it's better to forget about ourselves altogether and serve others and the Lord. That's how we fight pride. True humility is not thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself less. C.S. Lewis continues, "Don't imagine if you meet a really humble man, he will be what most people call humble nowadays. He won't be this sort of greasy, smarmy person who's always telling you that of course he is nobody. Probably all you'll think of him is that he's a cheerful, intelligent chap who took a real interest in what you said to him. We need childlike humility with all the wisdom and strength of being an adult. We need the wisdom from God to discern and pull apart what sinful pride from ourselves and our broken world from the grace and maturity that we're given from God. We're tricked by pride into thinking that being more sophisticated and mature means being more confident in our own wisdom and strength and being more self-reliant. But it takes more wisdom and strength to be humble. How much mental strength does it take for Job to continue worshiping God when everything is taken away from him rather than cursing him and taking life into his own hands? How much wisdom does it take for Moses to defy all conventional wisdom of the day and take the Israelites out of Egypt? Now, the best illustration I can think of childlike humility being warped by this world comes from our transition into adulthood. Teenagers. Children are awkwardly transitioning into members of this broken world. They search for a new identity away from their parents. They have a naive belief that their limited worldview is superior to their parents. They seek their own freedom and independence from their parents. They come across new hurts. They become skeptical and less trusting, and their childlike joy becomes filtered through having to adapt to the norms of this broken world. There's one last point I want to talk about. There's a relationship between pride and a certain kind of anxiety that I can't quite get clear on. Maybe an existential anxiety. But I do know that humility is the antidote. I think the essential nature of pride that puts ourselves in the place of God comes into conflict with a world where we aren't actually God. We come short. And this anxiety comes from this tension between our internal states and the outer world. But I think this anxiety helps us return to God. In the same way pain helps us avoid a hot fire. In perfect humility, there is no existential anxiety. In fact, there's no fear of what comes next. There's just true freedom in humility, because in total dependence of God, there's nothing to fear in the next steps we take.